7 things would deserve an entire hour. So I'm going to go quickly and just hit the highlights. And number 1, what's right about Christianity is it accurately and uniquely predicted Big Bang cosmology. It explains the properties and the timing of human beings. It explains the missing body of Jesus. It explains the problem of evil. It explains the faint-sun paradox, that is the fossil record. It even explains why we have a Center for Inquiry, and it explains the anthropic principle inequality. We'll see how much of this I can get done in the time that I've got allotted. I'm going to go quickly to the first point because I hit that fairly heavily last night. Biblical cosmology, the Bible, as I mentioned last night, contains 10 times as much content about the origin and structure of the universe as all the other holy books of the other religions combined. And it makes 4 main points repeatedly, namely that the universe is traceable back to a singularity beginning, an actual beginning of matter, energy, space, and time. It continuously expands from that point of beginning, expands under constant laws of physics, where one of those laws is a pervasive law of decay. Now, the point I'm making here is until the 20th century, the Bible was alone in making these claims about the universe. Not until Albert Einstein produced his theory of general relativity did this even come on the radar of the scientific community. Those of you who have been to church at least once are probably aware of at least a few of the passages that speak about the singularity beginning. Even if you hadn't, you're probably aware of Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the universe. The Hebrew word for create is to create something brand new that never existed before. The phrase shamayen, or rest, the heavens and the earth, refers to the totality of physical reality, all matter, energy, space, and time. Hebrews 11:3, the universe we can detect was made from that which we cannot detect. We can make detections within matter, energy, space, and time. Verses in Titus and 2 Timothy explicitly speak about the beginning of space and time when God created the universe. Today we can prove this through the space-time theorems, but first of those theorems state that if the universe contains mass, and if general relativity reliably predicts the dynamics of the universe, then space and time must be created by a causal agent who transcends space and time. All of us are evidence that the universe contains mass, some of us more than others. The other thing that might be encouraging to you is that today general relativity ranks as the most exhaustively tested and best proven principle in all of physics. Therefore, there's no rational basis for doubting the conclusion of this theorem. But today we have an even more powerful theorem which states that any universe that on average expands must have a beginning and a finite past that includes a beginning of space and time. This was discovered by a threesome, Bourdais, Balinpin, and Ellen Guth. And consequently, they concluded that all reasonable expanding universe models, that is, any model of the universe that would permit the existence of physical life, is subject to this relentless grip of the space-time theorems, and consequently, such a causal agent must exist. Now, as much as the Bible says about the beginning of the universe, it's got much more to say about the continual expansion of the universe. Based on the Hebrew verb natah, the continuous expansion that's ever being described. As I mentioned last night, I debated Michael Shermer of the Skeptic Society on this point. He insisted that all these passages are metaphorical, but in fact, Bible scholars for many millennia have interpreted these passages as being literal for good reason, because the word natah shows up in all 3 Hebrew verb forms, cal participle, cal perfect, and cal imperfect. And this was actually written down extensively as a prediction of the Bible more than 1,000 years ago by Jewish theologians, that indeed we must live in a universe that's continuously expanding. Again, unique to the Bible until the 20th century. And I showed this slide last night, which is a visual demonstration that indeed we must live in a continuously expanding universe. 2 shots from the Hubble Space Telescope, one 12 billion light years away, one 2 billion light years away. Hence, we get a picture of the universe 12 billion years ago and 2 billion years ago, all to scale, and you can see how the galaxies have expanded away from one another with respect to time. Jeremiah 33:25, God speaks and says, I've established the fixed laws of heaven and earth. Likewise, there are passages in Genesis and Revelation that tell us that from the moment of creation until God conquers and removes evil, the laws of physics remain constant. And indeed, we can prove that through direct measurement in astronomy by looking at galaxies millions and billions of light years away, and hence millions and billions of years ago, and the laws of physics indeed measure to be exactly the same as they are today. Romans 8 speaks about one of those laws, a pervasive law of decay that encompasses the entire creation. And as I mentioned last night, if you take these four biblical mandates, a beginning of space and time, continual expansion from that point of beginning, under constant laws of physics, when one of those laws is a pervasive law of decay, if all you know is the age of the universe, then you get a biblically predicted temperature cooling curve for the universe. That's the solid line there, and you can see 11 measurements that astronomers have made establishing that what the Bible predicts about the cooling of the universe indeed is correct. And again, the Bible was alone in making these claims until the 20th century. So it's dramatic proof that the Christian faith, based on the Bible, accurately predicts future scientific discoveries, and consistently does so, in this case uniquely does so. Well, let me pick up point number 2, and that is that Christianity explains the origin of human beings. And this is all thanks to the fellow who won the Templeton Prize a few days ago, Francisco Ayala, University of California at Irvine. And he was the one that a couple of years ago did a thought experiment and says, we know that the first life on planet Earth was bacterial, and today we human beings exist. But what he did is he calculated under the most optimistic Darwinian principles the probability that beginning with bacteria, you would wind up with advanced life, human beings or the functional equivalent. And the point he was making is that these Darwinian principles favor simplicity over complexity, and therefore he showed that under the most optimistic of assumptions, the probability that you'd wind up with the equivalent of human beings is only 1 chance in 10 to the 1/millionth power. That's a million zeros after the 1. To give you a point of comparison, if you count up all the protons and neutrons in the universe, it's only 10 to the 79 protons and neutrons. But actually this calculation is conservative. 3 physicists corrected this calculation because they pointed out that Francisco Ayala was assuming that the Earth presented a stable, benign environment for 4 billion years of Earth history. In fact, we know that's not true. The sun's 15% brighter today. The Earth rotates 6 times more slowly. The radiation is only 1/5 of what it was. A number of other factors that include the physics of the moon. But the bottom line is the probability is actually more remote than 1 chance in 10 to the 24 millionth power. Now, that probability is so utterly remote, it's indistinguishable from 0. And Francisco Ayala and the physicists John Barrow, Brandon Carter, and Frank Tipler concluded that this definitively proves there cannot possibly exist extraterrestrial intelligent life. That's a waste of time to look for, or to waste telescope time on it, because the probability is this tiny, it's utterly impossible. Now, what all 4 of them ignored is that those probabilities apply equally to us. Under naturalistic principles, we are impossible. We can't exist. But the fact is we're here, which means we didn't get here by naturalistic means. We must have gotten here by supernatural means. Now, the other thing we observe about the human species that ties right into the Bible's claims is that we were created